Streaming. Should be up. Should be live. Awesome, actually checking this out this time. So I got a couple little things done from last time. So welcome to the live stream, even though I'm not really live streaming in general. My goal is just to make it easier so I don't have to do a ton of editing afterwards. Some of the things I noticed last time was, one, my audio wasn't the best. My microphone kind of sits about here. The length of the cable is almost at its max. I've got some ideas. I might have to get a different mic or some other things to, bring it up closer. For now, I just turned up the gain and put on the NVIDIA noise canceling, so you shouldn't hear like the aircon in the background because it can be very hot in Singapore. The other thing I fixed was, remember the notepad thing where it was missing half the stuff? It was a setting in OBS. So I sat down and searched around, found a couple Reddit posts on what people did to fix that, and now I got that fixed. So last time we did a couple articles, we talked about AI stuff. Quick update since then, Google actually pulled down, that was one of those articles I talked about, Google pulled down their AI for what was going on, and it's unfortunate. Hopefully, they bring it back in a working manner. The thing I just want to say about AI real fast, when we talk about these things, I don't know what's up with people in general as human beings, but if you look at like an electric car, or a self-driving car, right? The way I've always viewed it is we want things to be safer, whether it's an airplane, whether it's a car, anything that could, put human lives at risk. And always the goal has been to do better than what a human could. And it takes time for technology to get better than where we are. And without technology, we can't do things such as IVF. That's an example, right? We need microscopes. We need tools to do that job. With electric cars, self-driving cars, keep saying electric cars, but self-driving cars, the goal was to have less accidents than humans, never be perfect. And every time an accident happens, everybody freaks the hell out, which makes no damn sense, because at that very moment that self-driving car had an accident, thousands of other people have accidents all over the globe, and you're not freaking out about that. The goal eventually is self-driving vehicles should perform better and safer than what a human could most of the time. And that's really what the goal is, that number going down. Same with planes. You want anything to reduce the risk and aid humans in being better at what they're doing, being safer at what they're doing. Now, AI, everybody freaks out. Like, oh my God, I can't believe AI made a mistake. What's wrong with you? You're not thinking? The fact of the matter is, you have to let the technology get better. You can't just expect to start it up and say, well, there's our perfect AI. Let's all just retire. That's not how the hell this works. Number one. Number two, come on. Let's cut the shit here, right? Humans created AI. We developed the code. We wrote the code. Humans gave it the data set. Oh, thank you. I'm assuming that's, hey, Jeremy, what's up? I'm assuming that's you, buddy. Glad my audio's better this time. And I'm gonna have to remember where I got back, right? Did it show up on the screen, your chat? Yeah, okay, cool. It's on the screen now too. Sorry, I'm gotta get used to looking at the camera in my second monitor over here. The second part with AI is, like I said, everybody freaks out about AI. Oh, it made a mistake, and yes, there might be a system that it's making a lot of mistakes. And like I said, Google pulled their AI because they're going to improve it. But we can't just freak out every time AI makes a mistake. And the reason behind that is AI itself, as I was just saying, is created by people. Okay, so a human creates AI. The code, everything's done. Now, AI itself, its data set comes from data created by humans. So people create this stuff. And if you go to the internet isn't the nicest place. You're going to get really nice stuff, interesting stuff, creative stuff, racist stuff, hate stuff, and everything else under the sun. And so you have to expect that the AI itself is going to pick up these bad habits. If you just let a child sit on YouTube all day that's like 8 years old, that kid is going to pick up some bad habits. And as a parent, you're supposed to limit what they do and educate them and be better. And so I think everybody just needs to get over this AI stuff, that it's not going to be perfect. The AI itself isn't intentionally trying to go out and tell somebody you should commit suicide or something horrible, or do something horrible, or go hurt other people. It's just a fact that it is learning, it is being trained, it needs to be worked upon. And as I said, don't freak out, chill out, talk about the problems, but just don't dismiss it completely, because ultimately it will get better and better and better It's just you can't freak out every time something little happens, right? So with that, that's really what I wanted to bring up, was that I think Google made the right decision to pull it. Redoing it will really help them, and just get that trust back with everybody that AI is going to make mistakes. Don't freak out and go from there, right? Now, I wanted to flip over and I wanted to bring up the tier model stuff. So that was what I wanted to kind of focus on. I brought it up last week and I want to kind of hit that for this maybe half hour that I'm here today. So the couple things we're going to discuss is, one, the tier model itself. What is the tier model? I'm just going to abbreviate it with TM for tier model. That's probably the biggest one. Like, what is it in, why should you have it? Why should you, oh my God, I can't type. Why should you have a tier model? Okay. And just my overall thoughts, overall feedback. We'll use feedback because I've been dealing with it for a very long time. So I would say I have close to 10 years of tier model experience. Been doing it. I've used it for 10 years. I've deployed it in hundreds and hundreds of Active Directory domains, right? I was actually an instructor at Microsoft to teach other people the tier model itself. So what is the tier model? Well, in reality, it's nothing more than a security control. It's about, security. It's about making boundaries around critical assets. Now, an asset could be users, it could be devices, it could be data, it could be servers, anything. So it's, if you're in the military world, you say, well, what's different between secret and top secret? They have those classification levels and you separate them out to reduce risk. Now, in a business, like as a normal company that is a medical provider, as an example, the medical provider themselves, they do have the data. Some of them have gotten really good at classifying data, but most of the time they need to start somewhere, which is carving up the most critical infrastructure from the less critical infrastructure. One piece of infrastructure could impact everything, where other pieces of infrastructure won't impact everything. Let me give an example. I take a normal computer for a normal user. Yes, it sucks if they got hacked, but the amount of damage is probably very little, whatever was on that computer, whatever their email was, and things like that. As opposed to, and even if you take it one step further, take a CEO. Getting into a CEO's computer will have bigger damage. I guess that's how you would rank it. Higher risk to the company because of what the CEO knows, what they're doing, and things like that. So even two users have different levels of risk. And same with servers. You can have servers that are just a web server. You can have a server that's a database that has, terabytes of records and information in that database. And you can go one step further. You can have what we call a domain controller, which is your identity, which has all your usernames and passwords. And so if you get into that, well, then you have everybody's access to everybody's systems. And that's where the tier model comes in. What we're trying to do ultimately is reduce the risk of how easy it is to steal the most powerful credentials in the environment. Okay. Now, obviously, this has changed a lot since I started 10 years ago. You have cloud, and cloud in itself could be another provider. So if we start back history lesson, many years ago, most people use Active Directory domain services inside their network. And then they'll extend it outside using Federation or using another provider. Okta has always been very big into Federation space as well. Then you have, you have Azure, which we need renamed to Entra ID. You have AWS and you have Google, and they all have their own different identity providers. And each of these, every one that you have, has to be secured. And you want some level of tier model within those. So the tier model itself isn't just for AD, it's for any of your, identity providers that you use at your company. And the more you have, well, the more it sucks, because the more you have to fix and you have to maintain and you have to monitor, and the more risk you have of getting hacked, right? So let's have a look at that. We're going to bring up one of my favorite tools, which is good old Microsoft Paint. So let me just flip the window over to Paint here. Where did Paint go? Right there. Okay, cool. I'm just going to do some drawings so everybody can, understand kind of what this looks like. All right. So let's answer the first question. Like, why do we need to do this? And I think the best way to do it is talk about what Active Directory looks like. Oh, you lost my audio? Am I back? Am I good, Jeremy? Thanks, buddy, for checking in on me. Hopefully I'm good. I can still hear myself in the microphone. It still looks like it's showing up. I know I changed scenes, but I hope that doesn't impact the audio. Well, I'll keep going just to be safe, and we'll go from there. So when we talk about this, it's typically Active Directory is represented as a triangle, right? And when I draw this for companies, customers, or anybody I'm teaching Active Directory, we talk about the multiple layers or multiple tiers within Active Directory. And when we look at the tiers, I typically draw it like this, right? Thanks, Jeremy, for checking in on that. Typically draw it like this. So at the bottom, we're just going to have little in-user people, right? So we just have a couple little people right here. And you know what? I need the pen. I'll just do it with a pen. Pen is easier to draw with anyways. Let's go draw some little people. So we have some, wow, that tip is very small. Let's get the bigger tip. This is the new paint where they decided to make everything background now. Okay, good, fix that. And got a bigger tip here. So we have some end users. The people live down here. Okay, all your end users. And whenever you draw an end user, you always give them horns because they give you headaches. And all their devices are down here, which could be just a computer or a printer or something. And we could call this tier 2. At the very bottom here, this thing's called tier 2. Kind of the lowest tier, meaning this is all the end user stuff. All the stuff that normal people use day in and day out. This is their area within Active Directory, okay? Now at the top, we have, well, domain admin. So I'm gonna bring this up here. Actually, let me just do this. See if I can make the font a bit bigger. We'll make it like 20. Domain. So you have domain admin at the top, and we call this tier 0. Okay. And from a hacker's perspective, we think about looking at it from a hacker's perspective. Tier 2 and tier 0 is not their goal, because if it was the goal, here's what would happen. They'd break into tier 2 and then they would stop. Or they'd break into tier 0 and then they would stop. But tier 2 and tier 0, only goal of getting those credentials is to get in to the other tiers. That is the only goal. The only goal is to go to here or to go down and flip arrow, go down this way. The only goal is to go into this middle tier. So, well, the middle tier, let's have a look at it. This is all tier. And why does the font like to go back to a different size? We'll go back to 22. Tier 1. And this area, I'll just keep it really simple. It's all the money, right? That's your money. That's your entire business. This is the entire business. This is the business, is this area. So when we talk about tier 2 and tier 0, as I said, if a hacker just says, oh, I'm going to buy this, I'm going to steal tier 0, and they go home. No, they don't stop there. Tier 0 then lets them do a ransomware attack where they go and wipe out all of tier 1 in tier 2, and then you have to pay money to try to get your stuff back, or you have to, restore all this from backup, which could be a very long process. The other point is tier 0, the only reason they steal tier 0 is because it makes it easier to get into tier 1. If they can get to tier 1 from tier 2, they won't touch domain admin. Ultimately, we make it, and I say we, meaning IT people, sometimes make it very, very easy to steal tier 0. So a hacker's like, well, I'm just going to take the easiest method. They're lazy people too, let's be honest. If they can get tier 0, that gets them into everything, why the hell not do that? And so when you take a step back and you look at this, you say, okay, obviously, I need to protect the most important area eventually, which is tier 1. But if you don't fix tier 0, which is above tier 1, all the time and effort you put into the security of tier 1 means absolutely nothing. Because I get tier 0, I get everything. So you have to fix the tier 0 first. And this is why we carve it up. Because if you break into one server over here in tier 1, right? That shouldn't impact other servers in tier 1. They should be carved up really nice and neatly. So if we were going to carve it up, you might say, okay, over here we have, it looks like this, and you can have, server 1, server 2, server 3, and, server 4. And ultimately, the goal of these is if I was to hack into one of them, let's say I break into this server, we'll go with this one, go with this server right here. Let's say I break into S2 or server 2. S1, S3, and S4 should technically not be impacted if you carved it up with least privilege access. However, if I get into tier 0 at the top here, right? And I break into this, well, then technically I own all this and I own all this. As that's the problem. That's why we have to protect tier 0, because it's the easiest path to own everything. Then once tier 0 is fixed, you can start looking at tier 2 and tier 1. All right. So now I'm going to talk about what I've seen going on publicly. And a lot of people make a lot of mistakes with the tier model. And the biggest one, so we'll go ahead and wipe this. Let's do a file, new one. Okay. So let me draw this in another method so people can get a better look at this, right? So in the middle, we're going to create a domain admin. This is like the center of your Active Directory, okay? So I'm going to show what's wrong with the tier model that a lot of people get wrong when they do this. So this is your domain admin, and God, Paint, can you just keep the damn thing the right size that I had? Stop changing it. Oh, you suck. Just stay at 20. 22 be nice. Your domain admin is in the center when you look at this from an Active Directory perspective. You say, okay, here's my domain admin. It's in the center of everything, right? You go there and fill this back in real quick. Okay, so your domain admin is the center of your Active Directory service. And then outside of the domain admin, I like to draw like another circle, and we will call this one, this is kind of your AD service. Okay, this is the Active Directory itself. So this is the AD service. Okay, let's move you up here. And once again, we have users, and we have, let's just say, computers are living in here. Okay. Actually, I'm going to remove those two. I know how I want to draw it. So inside the AD service, sorry about that, we're going to put what's in here. Typically, you have OUs, the way you organize your stuff. Okay. So a lot of times there's OUs within the AD service. You have like DNS, and you just have other things that AD does, right? But, and we'll put the users in here. We'll put the users back in here. But when we talk about this, the way I like to draw it is kind of like this on the outside, and it's like a layered ring. And so outside here is why you have to protect tier 0. Okay. So if we go back here and take a look at this, and why can't I find the damn letters? This is going to be a server. All the servers live out here. Okay. And we have just thousands and thousands of servers. Okay. And we can have regular computers too, user computers. So all these guys live outside. Okay. And they all come back into Active Directory. All of these ones come inbound. So every one of them is trying to make their way in to get something from Active Directory, allow a user to log in. So every computer you have is kind of domain joined, and they kind of work their way back in like this. Okay. So they're all coming back in. Get some other arrows here. They're all coming back into the AD service like so. Doing this, kind of like this. Let's get one more arrow. Where's that over here? So they're all coming back in. And as I said, without a tier model, what happens is this domain admin can log on to everything. So if you kind of were to just fill it in, you would say, okay, what can domain admin do? Well, domain admin has full power over this. That actually looks awful. Let's go with another lighter color, blue. Okay, cool. And then guess what? Because I have domain admin, remember domain admin can log into everything. What happens? I can log into here. Now, a hacker comes in, and the hacker decides I'm going to be able to find a way, and I break into this server. The hacker gets into this one. Okay. Now, a couple things that in IT I've always found very, very interesting, and this something to take to heart. Security sucks. Okay, what anybody tells you, it's not a fun job. Here's why. Hackers, you have to be perfect all the time. Every minute of the day, every day of the week, you have to be perfect with every system, every server, everything that's going in your environment. You have to be perfect. The hacker only has to get it right once. They only have to get it one time. You have to be perfect on everything all the time. It's just not a fair fight. You're just not, you're not set up for success. That's why hackers kind of have the advantage. They're always going to have the advantage. So if a hacker gets into this one, because domain admin could log into this, I'm able to steal the domain admin credentials most likely used on this endpoint, either on purpose or accidentally. So now the hacker automatically says, oh, I've stolen domain admin. So if we say, where's my black hat? We'll put, there was domain admin was on this box at the time. I've stolen domain admin. Guess what? As the hacker, I automatically get access to, well, pretty much everything. So now I own the whole environment. So from the hacker's perspective, the reality of it is when we have a no tier modeled Active Directory, the domain admin manages the AD service, but then the domain admin's also being used to manage the servers and the workstations, which you shouldn't use a domain admin for that. The domain admin really doesn't need to be used outside of the domain itself. However, due to bad habits and different IT people, different organizations, people will end up using this credential on a regular server or a regular computer. And then all the hacker has to do is get in one time, luckily enough, to be able to steal those credentials. And then they kind of own everything. Then they just move themselves around and say, well, where's the data that I wanted to steal? Well, the money was up here, right? So if I say, well, this application over here seemed to have a lot of money. This was my money one. Well, now they stole that one because it falls under the red. They made it very easy for them to get the money one or take out everything if they wanted to, right? So how would the tier model fix this? I think that's the main question to kind of show everybody or talk to everybody about. Why do you need a tier model? So that way, if I guess the goal is this. One, domain admin itself, you cannot use it outside of the 80 tier 0 servers. Can't use it outside of them, okay? Blocking it, hard blocking. That way a human being doesn't make a mistake. So as I said before, people are going to make mistakes. The goal of some of our security controls is to help enforce a policy, but also to make sure we don't make mistakes. And that way, when the hacker comes in and eventually they're going to break into this server again, domain admin isn't there. So now they can't just have access to everything. They have to keep working their way around, which eventually will hopefully set off alarms, bells, whistles, and you can catch the hacker before they do damage. You want to make them work harder versus giving it to them very easy, okay? So I'm going to save this to my desktop real fast, and I'll just call this the flat no tier model, just so I can have a copy of it. Now let me show you what this would look like when you implement a tier model, but I'm going to show you the problem with what everybody's doing, okay? So we're going to go back in. And once again, I'm just going to do my circles again very, very quickly. This will be domain admin. This will be the AD service. And this will be all the servers on the outside. Okay. So where's this again? Okay. Freaking stay at level 22. Domain admin's in the center. Once again, like we had before. Okay. So this is the AD service right here. And whenever you implement a tier model, what most people get wrong, they think a tier model is OUs. That's true, but it's also very false. Let me show you what happens. Let's say I deploy the OU structure for tier model. Okay, so I'm going to draw it kind of flat like this. Obviously, AD is like a hierarchy, but this is what it would look like. Okay, so if I was to deploy the tier model, I would create different OUs like so. Okay, so now I would say, okay, well, anything underneath this OU, tier 0. Anything under this OU is tier 1, and anything under this OU. Okay, cool. That's the OU structure. So you can put, well, ultimately what you would put underneath here would be, users and computers. And then we put users and computers. And we put users and computers over here, okay? So if you go and log into your normal desktop when you get into the office, your computer would live under tier 2 and your user account will live under tier 2. Tier 0 is the highest. It's the domain admins. So there shouldn't be very much there. It should be very little. The golden rule, no more than 5 domain admins, and no service accounts should ever be a domain admin. If you have a service account as a domain admin, I'm straight up going to hurt your feelings. It's wrong. You failed. Fix that shit today. Stop doing that. That's just unacceptable. Service accounts never need to be tier 0. If you've done that, you failed. You don't like it, go fix the problem, then come back to me. Okay, but the point is, keep it minimum. 5 people max really need to be domain admin. I've seen a couple scenarios where people want to bend it. Do your best. You really don't need more than 5 people. Reduce your risk. And tier 1 is going to be all your other admins, your developers, your server admins, your whatever admins you have that need to manage stuff. That's where most of your people are, most of your assets, most of your money, as we said before. This is the money area. Now, when you deploy these OUs and you move the objects around, you remember back on the previous example, I said DA can log into everything. Okay, and the reason I'm having this conversation is because I saw a script up in GitHub, and this came from somebody on LinkedIn. A LinkedIn post had like 1,000 likes or something ridiculous like that. And this person said, I wrote this really good tier 0 script. It was a piece of crap. I'm going to be blunt. I don't care. I'm not going to go pull up the LinkedIn post. I'm not going to flame the person and so people can go after them. My point is, it was a piece of crap because it didn't actually fix the tier model. It just gave you an OU structure, and then it tried to automate migration of this stuff, and you're going to break your environment. You can't do it like that. So if all you do is create OUs, and all you do is put these users and groups into containers, you didn't fix the real problem. Because why? Outside here, I have servers, and I know I put computers underneath here, but it's more of a representation of the object. But you still have the servers on the outside, all the thousands of servers in your environment, right? You have thousands of these probably. And then you have the computers, all the computers that your users use. They actually sit out here. These are the physical or virtual systems that exist in your environment. Okay, these are all out here. Now, just because I organized them in the tier model in Active Directory doesn't mean you fix the problem out here, because even with this, you can still log into a server or a computer with your domain admin. So your domain admin could log in here, or your domain admin could log in here. Okay, you're right back at the same problem you had before with the tier model in Active Directory. When you say, oh, I've created the OUs and stuff like that. Yes, you've carved up Active Directory a little bit with ACLs and stuff, but you didn't fix the original problem, because once again, a hacker comes back in again, and the hacker takes this one, and you logged in with DA, and guess what? They own the entire thing again. So what that script was missing, and what most people miss with the tier model, is the actual controls of who can log into where. There's 2 ways to do it. One of them is better than the other. Whether people like it or not, it's fact. You have 2 ways. And let me change the color back to black. You either need auth silos or you need a GPO with URA. Those are your 2 options. You either use authentication silos or you use a group policy with user rights assignments. That's it. So if you have a tier model and you haven't deployed any GPOs, then you don't have a tier model. That's all there is to it. All you have is a bunch of OUs with objects in it. You actually have to deploy GPOs, because the GPOs are going to say domain admin is not allowed to log in here. Okay, so let's assume, and we'll tidy this up a bit here. I deploy the GPO. Okay, so I'm going to deploy the GPO in here. I'm going to deploy the tier 0 deny GPO. I'm going to deploy the, we'll call it, the tier 2 deny, and we'll just call it like something like this, like tier 1 deny. Okay, now these aren't going to be perfect, obviously. Let's undo that a bit. Come on, go back. We'll do the tier 2. Let's call it deny GPO. And then we'll just go up here and call this one tier, what is it? Tier 1 deny GPO. Okay, so we've created the GPOs now. And what we really need to do is make sure that the systems are getting these policies. Okay, so this is where we start to extend out our line. Come on, line. So now, when we draw out these lines, this policy is applying to these different endpoints. And I'm being very generic here, but the point is to say that without the GPO applying, right? And I use the word deny. But the point is, now I've technically carved it up where whatever I want, and I know I use deny. I'm probably going to do, let me change it to allow because somebody's going to try to flame me on this. We're just going to cross this out and we'll just say allow. In theory, you would use deny. So I'm thinking technically, let me do it more methodically. It would be, the word would be allow for this example. But the policies themselves are technically denies, right? So allows like this, boom. So now you have your allow GPO and you have your allow GPO. Okay. So we go back up here. Let's erase some of this noise, erase some of this noise. Okay, cool. So we've erased all that. And now we've carved these up. So now that's like that. This is like this. And this is like this. Okay. Now, over here, we only allow tier 1 to log into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 0. So in this example, there are only 3 endpoints, these 2 computers and this 1 server, that the hacker can get domain admin from. There's only 3 that exist. So the DA can log in here, here, and here. However, DA is denied everywhere else. You can't get in anywhere else with domain admin. And before, as you saw, yes, you can put the OU structures in. Yes, you can move objects around. But that's not what controls this. This isn't what fixes the problem. What fixes the problem is where can you log on? That's the most important part of the tier model, is who can log on to where to reduce the exposure of your credentials. So now you know that these 3 computers, or these 2 computers in this server, are tier 0. They are your most important assets that you need to secure. And because only 5 people need to log into them, you can crank the security up to 11. And the reason is because not everybody uses this. Or if you turn the security up for the users, they're not going to be able to do their damn job, right? If you turn the security up too high on servers, sometimes it breaks an application. But there's no excuse why you can't have the highest and the best security for a very small number of tier 0 endpoints. Okay. Now, as I said, there's 2 ways to do this, and I want to talk about these 2 in the corner here. Auth silos versus GPOs. Now, most people are going to say auth silo, auth silo, auth silo. And auth silo, there's nothing wrong with them. However, there is. So there's, I would say, more limitations for the fact, 1, it doesn't work across forest. So in some scenarios, if you wanted to go with an auth silo and you have multiple Active Directory forests, it doesn't work. Okay. The other thing auth silos don't do, which is what I'm not a fan of, is if we take the security and we just draw like a little table here real fast, like so. Okay. And if we look at these, and back to 11. Oh my God, stop it. We'll just put auth silo up here, auth silo, and we'll put a GPO with a URA, user rights assignment, for those who don't know. Okay. On an auth silo, I control really 2 main things: the who and the where. Okay, so if I create an auth silo policy, what am I allowed? I'm saying who, these users, are allowed to log in where? These servers, these computers. Who, these tier 2 users, are allowed to log into these endpoints. And finally, who, these tier 0 accounts, are allowed to log in where? These tier 0 endpoints. So auth silos really are only able to do 2 main things: who and where. Now they have some pros, they have some cons. It really depends on how big your organization is and things like that. Both of them will end up having the con of you have to ongoing maintenance. It's just not click one time and it's set up forever, right? GPOs are pretty much similar. They have a who, they have a where, but they have something else that auth silos don't have. I'm going to say how. Okay. So let me give an example. Let's say I have a service account. We're going to say a service account called SVC Web. Okay. SVC Web is running on this server right here. In an auth silo, I could say SVC Web is allowed to log into the server. I can control that. In a GPO, I can do server SVC Web service account is allowed to log into that server. Both of them can do the same thing. The difference though is the login itself. Once I'm into that server, you can configure the SVC web to do a lot of different things, right? You can give it local admin, you can give it remote desktop user, then people can RDP in with it and things like that. So what you want is the how, okay? And this is where the user rights assignments come in. I could say that this service web is only allowed to run services or only allowed to do scheduled tasks. I can deny it network connectivity. I know that's a weird one. You wouldn't do that. You could limit it to not allow RDP. So the how is what GPOs can do. They can really limit this SVC web service account to only do specific things. And I say this because I've been at tons and tons and tons of companies where the developer will take and add that account to local admin, even though it doesn't need local admin to run a service. Or you'll see people logging in with this account because they know the password to it. And then everybody starts RDPing with it, even though it's not meant for RDP, it's meant to only run a service. And so, you know, it's really, really important that I personally still stick with GPOs, even though auth silos work. And I think they're very good, very quick. But from a long-term least privilege access perspective, if I give a developer a service account, I'm going to, one, give them a GMSA. That's a different topic. And two, I'm going to say that this service account only works on that server and can only do scheduled tasks or can only run services. You're not going to get to do whatever you want with it. You're not going to be logging in with it. You're not even technically won't even know the password with GMSA. But then it does, if somebody tried to add it to local users and domain users, I mean, local RDP, or I would deny it that. So even if they tried to give it local RDP, it wouldn't work, right? And so that's kind of the point here is once you've made the tier model, the question is how granular is your tier model? And that's really what I want to leave this at today. Now, next time around, I'm going to bring up a VM and I'm going to show kind of how to create your own tier model. Super easy. I can do it from scratch. Obviously, you want to automate it, and that's another topic. But my point here today was really to say, look, when you are talking about the tier model, and anybody out there talking about the tier model, you have to carve it up. And if you don't carve it up with GPOs, all you have is a bunch of OUs that aren't doing a damn thing. So everybody who says, I have a tier model, my question always is, how many of your GPOs are deployed to your endpoints? Have you deployed your GPOs out there? Okay. Then my second question, what are you doing with them? How granular are you with them? Are you actually restricting it? So, because if I'm a hacker and I break into the SVC web, it should have no impact on the other endpoints. And that's why you want to limit what this account can do and where it can do it, and then how. Okay, it's cool. That's it for this one. I'm going to keep it short, sweet. I think I was pretty longer than I wanted to be, but that was it. I had my friend pop in to make sure my chat and my audio was a little bit better than last time. This was just a quick and dirty of talking about the tier model, talking about the stuff I've seen and how many people are getting this wrong. I saw a god-awful script on LinkedIn, and it just upset me to see what the hell somebody did. And then so many other people giving this person a pat on the back. Look, I was just like, oh my God. And I didn't comment because I had nothing nice to say. I could have been really very rude, but it was pointless. What I'm going to do is come up here and say, if somebody has a script that only does OUs with ACLs, you don't have a tier model. You have absolutely nothing. If you don't put in restrictions of where the credentials can be used, like this, then you have a tier model. Then you have something useful. Then you have something that's actually, breaking up the attack chain and mitigating past the hash attacks. Okay. What I want to leave you guys with, if you don't ever read it, I'm not going to bring the web page up, but do a quick search for past the hash white papers. They are still very relevant. Maybe if you haven't read them in a while, refresh yourself. I probably read the past the hash white paper. Maybe I'm a little lazy now. Maybe once every 2 years. It used to be once a year. Keep it fresh in your head. Understand why you have to do this. Now, this is just Active Directory on premise. If you were going to do this in Azure, it's different. It's not the same by any means. And so that's my point. You've just mastered how to do tier model on premise. How many other authentication IDPs do you have in your organization, and how do you carve them up? Because in the cloud for Azure, it's global admin, but it's not just global admin. But to be honest, in the simplest aspect, how do you secure global admin in the cloud, right? And the other powerful credentials, okay? And with that, I'm going to drop it like this. If anybody liked anything, leave a comment. I'm gonna, like I said, this is live. There will be chat popping up on the screen. I'm monitoring it a little bit. I'm probably gonna try to stream to LinkedIn next time because I have a bigger presence on LinkedIn personally. It kind of fits what I do, but I did have fun getting this out. This is once again my Wednesday, so I'm being a bit more consistent. As I said, I wanted to be. I'm not gonna have to edit. That's awesome. I mean, editing is fun, but I don't have to edit. But with that, I will see everybody next Wednesday. I'm going to probably do a little bit more tier model, and if there's any good, interesting cybersecurity articles, I'll talk about those. But with that, everybody, you guys